So, Tuesday, yesterday there was talk that maybe Trump was going to come to some agreement or just do the walk away tactic that we've all been praying for. But I seen news this morning before I went to work at 6 a.m. that there'd been a couple of explosions in Iran. So, just going to get into this. Obviously, I haven't seen it, so we're just going to react.
Hi, everybody. Today's Tuesday, May 26, 2026, and our dear friend, our brother, Poffesor Mirandi, is here with us. Welcome back.
Hi, Nima. Thank you very much for bringing me on your show again. It's always a great pleasure.
Quickly, before we get started, I just clicked on this. Anything with Professor Mohammed Mirandi is worth watching. The way he schools Western journalists, and he's just an all-around decent human being, which you'll find the majority of the Shia in Iran are like. So, if anyone sees any of his videos or anything with him in, it's well worth a watch. Like, he's well respected and loved.
Let me start with what has happened yesterday. We had the two sides firing at each other, the United States and Iran. And it started, it seems, by American attack on Iranian boats. What has happened yesterday, Professor Matt?
It was actually the night before, the day before yesterday at night. The Americans bombed two naval vessels, small naval vessels. I think two were on each, and they murdered four soldiers, four guards. And it was unprovoked, and they were in Iranian territorial water, and there's no excuse. They were implying, I think, that they had something to do with mines, but they were not even in a place which had anything to do with which would have any need for mines. It was Iranian territorial water. So it's very strange, and we're seeing very different messages from the United States. The Iranians responded; they fired missiles, and also I think there was a ship struck hours ago alongside the coast of Oman, outside of the Persian Gulf, possibly a response to the U.S. aggression. But the point is that we are getting mixed messages from the United States. On the one hand, we saw all those messages. First, we had flexibility from the Americans, and the deal, in my opinion, is a good deal for Iran. And then there was a lot of pushback in the United States, and then Trump began to make all these crazy tweets that if he was serious, that would mean that the deal was completely undermined. But from my understanding, at the negotiating table, his tweets had nothing to do, or his social media posts had nothing to do with what was going on at the negotiating table. But the last, 5% or the last bits are frozen, from my understanding. They've been frozen for a few days now. Then we had this assault, and it's unclear why the United States is trying to, first of all, they murdered four people. Four families have lost their young sons, and it's unclear why they're doing this, why they did this. And then we had, of course, the Israeli regime again saying that they're going to carpet bomb Beirut and bring down all the apartment blocks. And you would think there would be, of course, outrage in the West, but the West has really exposed itself. There's human rights and all that, the nonsense that the facade that we would hear about for decades, or that we would see for decades, it's all gone. But Netanyahu wants to expand the war in Lebanon, to carry out airstrikes on civilian targets at a much greater, much more extensively, in order to wreck the ceasefire. Because, and this it should remind us all of what happened during the first ceasefire. After the fighting, and when right before the Islamabad talks, there was an agreement so that ships that were linked to those countries that were helping the United States against Iran, the Saudis, the Emiratis, Qatar, Bahrain, and the UAE, they would be able to leave but one of the conditions was a regional ceasefire, including Lebanon. And so as soon as that ceasefire agreement was declared, Netanyahu began carpet bombing cities in Beirut. He killed hundreds of people in 10 minutes. I mean, it's amazing what, just talking about these things and how the West just lets it happen and Western journalists are quiet. It's just unbelievable how the narrative in the West what it used to be like and what it is now when it comes to the Israeli regime.
And it's like the whole thing with the women are oppressed in Iran. They're forced to wear the hijab or the burqa. And then you look at what Israel are doing in Lebanon. Like you say, one of them, Smotrich or Ben Gvir, one of the two, has just come out and said, for every drone that gets through to the Israeli tanks, we're going to demolish 10 houses or hit 10 civilian infrastructures in retaliation. Like, come on, man. How can people not see this? The hypocrisy. We talk about wanting human rights and protecting people's rights, but turn a blind eye when it's Israel, the victims. I'm just glad people are waking up to it. Like,
but in any case, he wrecked the ceasefire back then. If he had halted the fighting, then we wouldn't be in this global economic crisis that we're in today, because the shipping through the Strait of Hormuz would have increased back then. That's like a month and a half ago, more than a month and a half ago. So right now, it seems like he wants to do the same thing. And then the Iranians responded saying that if he does this, then the peace process, the negotiations will be disrupted or stopped altogether. So this is where we are right now. And then on the other hand, Trump put out a social media post, I'm sure you want to get to that, where he talks about the Iranian nuclear program, and he says, instead of saying that the enriched uranium has to go to the United States, he's talking about alternatives. Now, Iran is not negotiating this with the United States yet. It has left this after the first stage. If the first stage passes off successfully, if the 60 days confidence building measures are implemented, then there will be negotiations, which will be about Iran, the sanctions against Iran, which are very extensive, and many of them are law in the United States because Congress and the Senate have approved of them, and of course the nuclear program. So, but that will be left for later. But now we have the challenge of the U.S. provoking Iranians by killing Iranian sailors, and the Israeli regime slaughtering innocent civilians in order to wreck the ceasefire. So it's really unclear what will happen. No one knows. Everyone is just saying we have to wait and see. You can't even say like this will probably happen or that will probably happen. It's too cloudy. It's too cloudy. You can't see through the fog.
Yeah. Iranian response, as we've learned from IRGC, they shot down a MQ-9 drone, and the other drone was, they fired at another drone, RQ-4 and F-35. It seems that F-35 is in the region. Are they testing Iranian air defense system to see the location of the air defense system, or to see what's going on close to close to the Strait of Hormuz? What is the capabilities of Iranian army, Iranian IRGC, when it comes to the air defense and the improvement of the air defense system of Iran?
Well, obviously that is a part of it, but they actually did kill 4 people. 4 people were martyred, so it goes even further than that. They haven't done any extensive damage beyond that. I mean, when they said they fired missiles at launchers and that sort of thing, that was really serious. What happened basically was that the Iranians fired missiles at them after they murdered those 4 sailors, and then they fired missiles back. And then today, a ship was hit off the coast of Oman. I don't know exactly what was on that ship, but I think it was a commercial ship. But I think that was probably had something to do with the UAE. I'm guessing. But in any case,
it was an oil tanker, Professor Mirandi.
For which kind?
This one,
UAE
the of Oman.
Yes, but probably near UAE because Oman and the UAE, they're right
so
beside
close.
each other. Yeah, so Iran wouldn't do. Iran has never struck anything that belongs to Oman. During the war, they remained untouched. There were a couple of drones that hit Oman, and it was clear that it was from the Emirates or Saudi Arabia because Iran has very good relations with Oman. Actually, the Oman has benefited enormously by staying out of this war, and they have excellent relations with Iran, and they have had no damage. And that's the path that the others could have chosen, and they chose to do the opposite and assist the Americans. But in any case, the point is that when you look at what the Americans did in the Persian Gulf, and when you look at what Netanyahu is planning to do in Lebanon, and what he has been doing, and then when you look at Trump's social media posts that I explained earlier, it's very difficult to see where things are going to go. The Speaker of Parliament went to Qatar to make sure that, as a part of this agreement, that the transfer of, I think, about $12 billion to Iran from Qatar takes place, actually happens, because we've had the last time Qatar, our money, if you recall, I'm sure you recall, it was when it was stuck in Korea, South Korea. Then they transferred it to Qatar, and then they wouldn't transfer it to Iran. The Americans were dishonest. The Biden government, they were dishonest, and they wouldn't let that money through, even though there was an agreement. They used shortcomings in their agreement, loopholes to prevent Iran from using it. So this time round, the Iranian delegation is in Qatar to make sure there's no loophole, and as soon as there's an agreement, if there is an agreement, that money is swiftly transferred to Iran.
That was the thing with the JCPOA, what they signed under President Obama. They were meant to get sanctions relief, and part of that was the money was tied up in South Korea. But again, the Americans just lie. And like, at the end of the day, what business have they got in the Middle East? I know they invested a lot of money in oil infrastructure, but they want it all. They think they own it all. It's crazy, man. This is Iran's money. If you were Iranian, you know, you've been oppressed, living under sanctions. People talk about the oppression of the Iranian people. The majority of the oppression on the civilians of Iran has been through sanctions, 100%.
Just before talking about, I want to focus on what has happened in Qatar, but here we've learned that Oman is improving the relationship, you know, in terms of the trade with Iran. And a new decree, an executive decree ordering Oman to increase its volume of trade and economic relations with Iran, which was signed by the Sultan of Oman. And I think the new mechanism of the Strait of Hormuz is bringing these two countries together as well. And Iran said is not going to be a toll. Yesterday, we've learned from the foreign minister of Iran is there would be no toll system, but is a fee system, something like environmental fee, something of that sort.
Yeah, so there's no toll, but there'll be a fee. Now, you can, in any case, they're going to take, they're going to benefit from each ship passing through. And they will, but more, perhaps just as important, is the fact that they will be able to control who goes through, because they don't want American naval ships to go through. They don't want American ships to go through that carry equipment for naval bases or Israeli regime equipment or anything like that. So Iranians are going to remain in charge of the Strait of Hormuz, and they are cooperating with Oman, and the Omani government is fine with it. And as as you rightly point out, that the relationship is expanding. The same is true with Pakistan, and both to the detriment of the Emirates. Of course, Dr. Ghalibaf's trip to Qatar is both to negotiate and to make sure that the money is, if there's an agreement, is swiftly transferred to Iran, but also he's there to improve relations with countries in the Persian Gulf, because they made, except for Oman and Iraq, of course, they made a bad choice in supporting the United States and helping them kill all these Iranians and destroying so much of our infrastructure. But the Iranian Ayatollah Khamenei, he has stressed on more than one occasion that we have to have good relations with our neighbors. And so Dr. Ghalibaf, I'm sure, he is there also to see if there are ways to improve the relationship with the countries in the Persian Gulf, to push them or draw them away from the United States, at least to a degree.
Actually, moments ago, before coming to this live, we had the account of Ayatollah Mujtaba Khamenei, the supreme leader of Iran, publishing that he says, I invite all Islamic countries and governments to friendship and cooperation in goodness, so that by working together, we may take steps towards the advancement of the Islamic Ummah and the resolution of the Islamic world problems. Here is a new concept, in my opinion, what's going on out of this war, this conflict, which is the solution that the Iranian supreme leader is talking about: a new security architecture, a new cooperation, something that would bring peace and prosperity to the region. What is the Iranian concept on that, and how far they would go, Iranians would go to achieve that?
Well, this is something that actually the martyr Ayatollah Khamenei was also pursuing. But I think what the Iranians are now thinking, and what Ayatollah Sayyid Mujtaba Khamenei is now thinking, and this is the third time within this short period of time that he's spoken about neighbors and the need to have improved relations. The thinking is now that since this war, these countries have recognized that the United States is not doing them any good, that following the United States has done enormous damage to their image and to their infrastructure and to their economies. And so now perhaps is an opportunity to convince them to not to change completely, because these are countries that are, their leaders are proxies, and their families, they go to the West, they study in the West, they spend their vacation in the West. I'm sure there's a lot of videos of their family members doing things that they shouldn't be doing in the West. So, up to a point, though, Iran thinks that now is a good opportunity to draw them away from the United States, at least so that there will be more safety and security in the region. And what Iran has been proposing is that the countries in the Persian Gulf region together, they establish their own security, a collective security. But again, it's still very early, and we're still potentially on the verge of war again. But still, this is something that they are pursuing. But it could be hypothetically. I doubt it tonight or tomorrow night. But hypothetically speaking, we could be at war the next time you and I have this conversation. So nothing is clear. We could have an agreement. We could have stalemate for the days to come. We could have war. It's completely unclear where things are going. But in any case, the leader's message, the Hajj message that I think is a very interesting message that just came out on his Twitter account and other accounts, and his Telegram account. That, alongside Dr. Ghalibaf's trip to Qatar, and as far as I know, he's still there. At least he was this morning. I think that is a new effort by Iran to see if things can change, and there does seem to be some movement. I don't know the details, but apparently there are some bilateral discussions going on between Iran and the other countries in the Persian Gulf region, and there has been some progress.
Yeah, as you've mentioned, it seems that the signs of these, because it wasn't just the head of the parliament together with foreign minister and the head of the central bank of Iran, Hemmati, he was there because they want to know how they transfer the money, the frozen Iranian assets, which is something like $24 billion. And it seems that the United States has agreed to release at least half of that before 60 days of ceasefire. And during the 60 days of ceasefire, they're gonna release
at the very beginning.
The second
at the beginning, I think about half of it is supposed to be released, and then the rest comes gradually, if we have an agreement, and if the agreement
who's gonna guarantee that? It's gonna be the Qatari government or the United States?
Well, at the end of the day, Iran has learned a lot from the nuclear deal, the JCPOA. In the JCPOA, which I was involved with the JCPOA negotiations. I was in Vienna when it was signed. I was like the media advisor to the foreign minister, Dr. Zarif, back then. And the mistake that we made, the Iranians, meaning I wasn't a negotiator, but was that we in the agreement we had certain commitments, and the Americans had some commitments. And the Iranians carried out their commitments, and then the Americans wouldn't carry out theirs. And the Iranians were chasing after the Americans until the end of Obama's term in office, and the Americans just wouldn't implement the deal. So it turned out not to be a good deal for those reasons. If the Americans had actually been faithful and honest to the agreement, it would have been a decent deal. But we made the mistake of allowing them to have these loopholes and to take advantage of us. So this time around, the Iranians are not willing to do that. So at the very start, they have to receive that money, and that's why they're in Qatar, to make sure that this goes through immediately. There are no hiccups. But at the end of the day, the Iranians have the most important piece of leverage, and that is the Strait of Hormuz. And if the American side does not abide by its commitments, then the strait is closed. That's why Iran got such a good deal. In the war, they had the upper hand, and as a result, they were also able to maintain control over the Strait of Hormuz. And the U.S. siege is a double-edged sword. It's hurting the Iranian economy, but it's devastating the global economy and, of course, the economies of these five Arab regimes in the Persian Gulf too. So the Iranians have this time around, they're not going to carry out their side of the bargain and then wait for this other side to do so. Because Obama didn't, and Trump is definitely worse than Obama. Mm-hmm. He's worse in the sense that he's untrustworthy, dishonest, and which actually, some Americans may think that this is a good thing. It's actually a bad thing for the United States, because it makes it impossible to come to any agreement with the United States. Almost it makes it much more difficult because no one trusts the United States.
And can you blame Iran for not trusting the United States and Donald Trump? Just look at his Truth Social posts. He's just flip-flopping, changing his mind to manipulate the markets, to profit from this war, while the rest of the world suffers, while the price of fuel goes through the roof, while people die in Iran and around the world. Never forget Minab's school tragedy, them poor schoolgirls on the first day. Never ever forget that. And at the end of the day, America, during the 12-day war last year and at the start of this conflict on the 28th of February, committed perfidy, which in the Geneva Convention is an act of war. They attacked during negotiations. So why should Iran? I hope Iran just keep holding them to the sword. Honestly, this is what Trump and Netanyahu need, They need a reality check and fast. And yes, it's hurting us in their pocket. But what's the alternative? The alternative is Netanyahu gets his wish of greater Israel and Trump takes all the oil. They profit. Nothing gets better for us, does it? So I'm just hoping that Iran stick to their guns and get the best deal possible for them and their people. But let us know what you think.